The night sky was still and quiet, but the air was thick with tension. For days now, humanity had been on edge, watching the stars with nervous anticipation. The mysterious signal had shaken the world, and now a strange object was visible in the sky. It was not a comet or a satellite. It was something much bigger, something far more dangerous. Far above Earth, a massive ship hovered, blocking out the stars with its dark, imposing shape. No one knew who the aliens were or what they wanted, but everyone could feel that something big was coming, something that would change everything. In a small government facility, the world's top scientists and military leaders sat around a large circular table. Their eyes were glued to the screen, showing live footage of the alien ship. The tension in the room was unbearable. "We have to make contact," said General Carter, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. He was a man who had seen wars, battles, and loss. But this was different. There was no playbook for this kind of situation. "We don't even know if they're friendly," Dr. Sanchez, the lead scientist, replied. Her eyes were wide with fear. "The last message we received, it was a warning, not a greeting." The message, decoded weeks ago, was a strange combination of symbols and sounds. After weeks of analysis, the scientists had finally translated it. The message had been clear, if not ominous. The great mistake. It had spoken of a long-forgotten error, a terrible misunderstanding involving humanity. The aliens who sent it had seemed to regret their past actions. But what did that mean? Were they returning to correct their mistake, or to finish what they had started long ago? The silence in the room was broken when a voice crackled through the speaker system. It was not in any language that the humans knew, but it was unmistakably alien. The sound was deep, like a rumble from the belly of the earth. The words were strange, but the tone was calm, almost peaceful. "Should we respond?" asked Commander Wells, who had been tasked with overseeing the military operations. He was known for his no-nonsense approach, but even he couldn't hide the nervousness in his voice. Dr. Sanchez's hand trembled as she pressed a button. The scientists had been working on a translation system, a way to communicate with the aliens, but it wasn't ready. Not yet. Still, they had to try. The world was waiting for answers, and the ship above them wasn't going to wait forever. Suddenly, the screen flickered. The image of the alien ship shifted, showing a closer view of its massive hull. It was nothing like anything humans had ever seen. Its surface was smooth and metallic, reflecting light in strange, unnatural ways. There were no visible windows or doors, just sleek, dark panels that seemed to hum with a strange energy. "Commander, I think we're out of time," Dr. Sanchez said urgently. "We need to make contact now." Without thinking, Commander Wells gave the order. "Send the signal. We have to try." The scientists quickly prepared the transmission, sending a simple greeting in every known language. It was a risk, but it was the only thing they could do. As the signal pulsed through space, a sense of dread filled the room. The air felt heavy, as though something was about to happen, something that would change everything. Minutes passed. Then, just as the scientists were starting to lose hope, the ship above Earth moved. Slowly at first, then faster. It began to descend, a silent giant approaching the atmosphere. The room was filled with frantic voices as the alien ship continued its descent. "This is it," General Carter said grimly. "We have no choice now. We must prepare for the worst." The entire world watched in silence as the alien ship neared the ground. Every television, every phone, every device that could connect to the outside world was tuned to the same live feed. No one knew what would happen next. No one knew if this was the moment of peace or the beginning of something far worse. The ship landed with a soft thud, sending a ripple through the ground beneath it. There was no explosion, no shockwave, just a quiet, almost eerie stillness. The world waited, breathless. Then, a door opened on the side of the ship. It was not like any door humans had seen before. The metal parted like liquid, flowing away from itself to reveal a dark, glowing interior. From the depths of the ship emerged figures, tall, humanoid creatures that glided silently toward the Earth. Their bodies were wrapped in flowing robes of shimmering light, their faces hidden behind masks that seemed to change shape with every movement. No one knew what to make of them. Were they friendly? Or were they something much darker? "Stay calm," Commander Wells ordered. "Stay alert. We don't know their intentions." The aliens moved in unison, their movements graceful and deliberate. They reached the ground, and for a moment, all was still. The world held its breath, watching. Then one of the aliens raised a hand, a gesture that, for all the humans knew, could be a sign of peace or a signal for war. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Commander Wells slowly stepped forward, his heart racing. He didn't know if he was making the right decision, but he had no choice. This was the moment. This was the chance to learn the truth. "Do you understand us?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with an edge of fear. "Why have you come back?" The alien who had raised its hand tilted its head slightly. Then, in perfect English, it spoke. "We have come to correct the great mistake. For centuries, humanity had lived in ignorance of its true place in the universe. That was until the discovery of an ancient artifact deep beneath the ruins of a forgotten civilization. The artifact, a small metallic object inscribed with strange symbols, had been unearthed by a team of archaeologists in the deserts of Egypt. At first, it seemed like nothing more than another mysterious relic, buried for thousands of years. But when the scientists began to study it, they realized it was far more than just an old object. It was a key to unlocking a long-lost history. Dr. Isabel Carter, a leading expert in ancient civilizations, was the first to notice something unusual about the markings on the artifact. The symbols were not of any known language, but as she compared them to other ancient scripts, she found something even more shocking. The symbols closely resembled those found in ancient texts that spoke of a race of beings who once ruled over humans as if they were mere pets, creatures to be tamed and controlled. These beings were not human, nor were they from Earth, and yet they had somehow left their mark on humanity's past. The discovery shook the scientific world. For weeks, Dr. Carter and her team worked tirelessly to decipher the artifact. They discovered that it was part of a much larger puzzle, one that spanned not just the Earth but the stars. The text spoke of an ancient alien species that had once come to Earth, far before recorded history. These beings, with their advanced technology and superior intellect, had looked upon early humans not as equals, but as pets to be controlled and observed. According to the texts, the aliens had taken humans from their tribes, forced them into captivity, and studied them as one might study an animal in a zoo. Over time, however, something had gone wrong. The aliens had made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and it had changed everything. Dr. Carter's research revealed that the aliens had come to Earth for one purpose: to use humans in an experiment they never fully understood. But as their time on Earth passed, something had happened. The humans, who were thought to be nothing more than animals, had begun to evolve faster than the aliens could have anticipated. They had begun to learn, adapt, and ultimately rebel against their captors. The alien race, which had once seen humans as inferior beings, had underestimated them. And that, Dr. Carter realized, was the great mistake. The mistake had not just been about underestimating humanity's potential. It had been about the aliens' failure to understand the power of the human spirit. As the aliens realized that their experiment had failed, they abandoned Earth, leaving no trace of their existence behind. But they had never fully erased the evidence. The relics they left behind, hidden and buried for millennia, told the story of a forgotten past, one that had shaped the present in ways humanity could not yet understand. As the team pieced together the history, Dr. Carter felt a chill run down her spine. The more she uncovered, the more she realized how much humanity had been wronged. It wasn't just the aliens who had been watching. There were others, other species in the galaxy who had known about humanity's mistreatment, but had done nothing to stop it. And now, as the world prepared for the arrival of a mysterious alien ship, Dr. Carter's mind raced. Had the aliens returned to finish what they had started, or had they come to apologize for their mistakes? The world, on the brink of discovering its true place in the cosmos, was about to learn a secret so deep that it could change the course of human history forever. But as Dr. Carter stood in the lab, staring at the artifact in front of her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The aliens had left, but their legacy was still very much alive. And now, humanity was about to face the consequences of their ancient mistake. The message from the stars had been clear: the great mistake. For days, the world had waited, holding its breath as the alien ship hovered ominously above Earth. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, massive, sleek, and dark, casting an eerie shadow over the planet. Every nation had been on high alert. Leaders gathered in emergency meetings. The world's best scientists worked tirelessly to decode the aliens' intentions, and civilians, unsure of what was coming, watched the sky in silence. The fear was palpable, the unknown overwhelming. No one knew what the aliens wanted, or even if they were hostile. But one thing was certain: they weren't here by accident. As the ship drew closer, the world seemed to stop. The government had been preparing for this moment, yet no one truly knew what to expect. Would this be a peaceful first contact, or would it be the start of something far worse? The entire planet was at a crossroads. At the military command center, the top officials and scientists stood in a tense silence, staring at the massive screen that showed the alien ship descending toward Earth. It was too big to be ignored, too menacing to be dismissed as a simple misunderstanding. The air was thick with uncertainty. Commander Jack Wells, head of Earth's Defense Forces, paced back and forth. He was a man used to making decisions under pressure, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced. "We need to make contact," he said finally, his voice sharp. But no one in the room had an answer. The question wasn't if they should communicate with the aliens, but how. How could they understand the intentions of beings so far beyond humanity's comprehension? Dr. Isabel Carter, the scientist who had unlocked the secrets of the ancient artifact in the desert, now stood at the center of the room, her fingers hovering over a keyboard. The signal from the alien ship had been received, a strange melodic hum that defied all known patterns of communication. It was unlike any language Earth had ever known, but she had been working on a translation system. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of the alien code. The system was still in its early stages, but it was their only hope. "We need to try," Dr. Carter said, her voice trembling slightly as she prepared to send a response. "If we don't reach out now, we may never have another chance." As the room fell into tense silence, a faint signal crackled through the speakers. It was faint at first, but it grew clearer as the minutes passed. The words, though not in any human language, had an unmistakable rhythm. The aliens were speaking. The ship was close, closer than anyone had anticipated. Then, without warning, the alien ship shifted direction, its enormous hull gliding silently over the Earth's surface. It was coming down. The world held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Could they communicate with the visitors from another world? Or was this the beginning of a conflict that would change the future of the planet? The tension in the room was unbearable as the ship landed with an eerie grace. It made no noise, not a single tremor, as it touched the Earth's surface. The screen went dark for a brief moment before flickering back to life. The camera feed from the landing site revealed something that made the room fall into complete silence. The ship's door opened. Slowly, impossibly slowly, it began to part, revealing figures stepping out. They were tall, taller than any human, their bodies cloaked in a strange, shimmering material that seemed to pulse with energy. Their movements were smooth, almost fluid, as though they didn't quite walk but glided. The silence around them was unnerving. They were like nothing humanity had ever seen. Their faces were hidden behind a mask of dark metal, but their presence was undeniable. powerful, commanding, and filled with a sense of ancient knowledge. Commander Wells and Dr. Carter exchanged uneasy glances. This was it. This was the moment they had prepared for, and yet no one was truly ready. As the alien beings advanced, the world held its collective breath. "Do they mean us harm?" one of the soldiers whispered, barely able to contain his fear. "Only one way to find out," Commander Wells replied, though his voice lacked certainty. They had no idea what these beings wanted, or why they had come. The message they had received, the great mistake, was still a mystery. Did it refer to a past error made by these beings, or was it a warning of something yet to come? As the aliens reached the landing pad, one of them raised its hand in an unmistakable gesture. The rest of them stopped in place, and the silence deepened. It was a gesture of communication, but whether it was peaceful or threatening was still unclear. The entire world waited for the answer, every eye trained on the screen. A crackling noise came through the speakers, followed by a voice, soft but unmistakably alien. The words were not in English, but somehow through the strange, rhythmic sounds, the translators on Earth began to decode them. The alien spoke one word: mistake. The word echoed in the minds of everyone listening, sending a chill through the room. "We have come to correct the great mistake," the alien voice said, its tone calm, almost apologetic. "And you, humanity, are the reason." In that moment, the true weight of the message hit everyone like a thunderclap. This was not just an ordinary first contact. The aliens were here to correct something, a mistake that involved humanity itself. But what mistake? What had happened in the distant past that had brought them back now? As the aliens began to step forward, their intentions still shrouded in mystery, the world was left with one question: what had humanity done that was so wrong? And would they be able to fix it, or would they pay the ultimate price for an ancient error? The silence that followed the aliens' declaration hung heavily in the air, thick with uncertainty. "We have come to correct the great mistake." The alien's voice echoed once again, as though the very word mistake carried the weight of millennia. Humanity had been given a glimpse into something far beyond their comprehension, something ancient and terrifying. The alien figures stood still, their bodies cloaked in shimmering metallic robes, their faces still obscured behind featureless masks. Despite their stillness, they radiated an energy so profound that it made the air around them hum with power. Dr. Isabel Carter could barely contain her shock. The words lingered in her mind, echoing relentlessly. What was the great mistake? Why were humans involved? She had spent years studying the past, searching for clues, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. Everything she knew, everything humanity had assumed about their place in the universe, was being called into question. Commander Wells stood motionless beside her, his hand resting on the holstered sidearm at his waist, though he knew it was useless in the face of beings so advanced. He was a man of action, trained for every possible scenario, but this was unlike anything he had ever imagined. The aliens were not attacking. They weren't even making a move that could be interpreted as hostile. Instead, they waited, waiting for a response, waiting for humanity to understand what they were here to do. Why? Dr. Carter's voice trembled, breaking the silence. She didn't care if the question was too simple, too direct. This was her one chance to understand. Why did you do this? Why did you treat us like animals? The alien that had spoken, the one who seemed to be their leader, stepped forward, its movements smooth and deliberate. It raised a hand, an oddly graceful gesture that seemed to cut through the tension. The others followed its lead, each of them standing perfectly still, their presence overwhelming, as if they were a force of nature rather than individuals. The leader's voice came again, this time clearer, more deliberate. "We did not understand. In our arrogance, we believed you were less than what you are. But your evolution, it has surpassed us in ways we never expected. We saw your potential too late." A chill ran down Dr. Carter's spine. The revelation hit harder than she expected. The aliens, these ancient, godlike beings, had once treated humans as nothing more than pets, inferior creatures to be kept in captivity. They had misjudged humanity's true nature, and that mistake had shaped the fate of Earth for centuries. The alien continued, its voice calm but filled with a deep regret that seemed to stretch across galaxies. We believed you were nothing more than animals, to observe, to study, to manipulate. But you grew, you learned, you adapted. And now, we are here to fix what we failed to see in you. Dr. Carter struggled to grasp the full weight of the alien's words. The idea that humanity had been subjugated by an alien race long before recorded history, that the progress of mankind had been nothing but a series of hidden experiments, was almost too much to bear. She had always believed humans were the masters of their own destiny, but now she wondered, had their entire evolution been a mistake? Were they just pawns in a larger game? A sharp gasp broke the tension in the room. Commander Wells turned quickly to the screen, where military personnel were watching the proceedings. "Sir," one of the technicians stammered, "the ship is emitting a new frequency. It's a signal. It's reaching other parts of the planet." Wells felt his stomach tighten. If the aliens were broadcasting something, it could mean they were about to reveal more than just their history. They could be sending a message to the rest of the world, to every nation, every government, every human on Earth. "We need to stop this broadcast," Wells said urgently. But before anyone could act, the room went silent again, and the alien leader spoke once more. "This signal is not for you. It is for the other species who have watched from the shadows, for the others who have known your true nature, but chose not to interfere. They must know what we did. They must understand the price of underestimating humanity." Dr. Carter's heart pounded. Others. There were more alien species involved in this, more who had known about humanity's treatment and done nothing to stop it. The implications were staggering. Were they allies, enemies, or something else entirely? Before anyone could respond, the alien leader continued, its voice now filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "We, the ancient ones, were not the only ones to mistake you. Others, across the stars, believed you were nothing more than creatures to be exploited, but you have shown us the truth. And now you must prove to the galaxy that you are not the same, that you are no longer the pets of the universe." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Humanity was being given a choice, one that would define the course of their future. They had to decide whether to accept their past, a past that had been shaped by the arrogance of other species, or to rise up and prove that they were not slaves to fate. Dr. Carter's mind raced. This was the moment of reckoning. But the question remained, how could humanity prove its worth to beings who had treated them like nothing more than animals? What could they do to show that they had grown beyond their past mistakes, beyond the cage of alien misunderstanding? Commander Wells turned to Dr. Carter, his face grim. "Do you think we can do it? Do you think humanity can prove we're more than just a mistake?" Dr. Carter hesitated, her thoughts clouded with doubt. But something inside her stirred. A spark of belief, a glimmer of hope. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about becoming something more. About showing the universe that humanity was capable of greatness, of overcoming its past. "We have to," she said finally. "We have no choice but to show them who we really are." The alien leader nodded slowly, as if it had been waiting for this moment. It extended a hand toward Dr. Carter, its movement deliberate and precise. "Then show us, Earth, show us what you are truly capable of." As the hand hovered in the air, an undeniable challenge was set before humanity, to prove that they were more than just a mistake, more than the pets of the universe. They had to rise, or they would be doomed to remain nothing more than a forgotten chapter in an ancient story. The world held its breath. The future of humanity depended on the answer. The alien leader's hand remained outstretched, a silent challenge that hung in the air like a dark promise. The entire world seemed to hold its breath, watching, waiting for humanity's response. Could they rise to the occasion? Could they prove that they were not simply the mistake of an ancient, arrogant species, but something much greater? The weight of the moment pressed down on Dr. Isabel Carter's chest as she stood before the towering beings. Behind her, Commander Wells and the world's leaders watched with a mixture of fear and hope. The alien leader's voice, calm yet charged with an undeniable gravity, broke the silence. "You have been given a choice, Earth. Show us your worth. Prove that you are not what we once thought you to be." Dr. Carter's mind raced. How? How could they prove themselves worthy in the eyes of beings so powerful, so advanced? Humanity had been wronged, but could they undo centuries of exploitation with a few words? Could they ever hope to live up to the expectations of these ancient beings who had once seen them as nothing more than pets? "We don't have much time," Commander Wells said, his voice a low whisper, though his eyes never left the alien leader. "If we fail, if we don't act now." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the terrifying possibility of failure. Humanity's fate was on the line. But in that moment, something inside Dr. Carter clicked. She realized the true nature of the challenge the aliens were presenting. This wasn't just about proving humanity's worth in a fight or battle. It wasn't about technology or strength. This was a test of humanity's character, of what they had learned over the centuries, of how they had grown beyond their primitive, enslaved past. Dr. Carter stepped forward, her mind still clouded by doubt, but her voice steady. "We are not the creatures you thought us to be," she said, her words carrying across the landing site. "We've made mistakes. We've been blind. But we are capable of change. We have learned. We have grown." The alien leader tilted its head slightly, as if considering her words, and then, to the surprise of everyone, it spoke again. "And how will you prove this? How will you show us that you are no longer the mistake of the universe?" Dr. Carter's heart pounded. She thought back to the artifact, to the ancient civilizations that had been oppressed by these beings, to the twisted history humanity had endured. The answer wasn't simple, but it was clear. "We'll show you through our actions," she said firmly, her voice growing stronger with every word. "Not with force, not with war, but with peace, with compassion, with the choices we make every day to do better, to be better. Humanity may have started as your experiment, your mistake, but we've overcome that, and now we have the power to choose our own destiny." Commander Wells, standing beside her, nodded in agreement. Humanity has faced countless struggles, wars, famine, disease, but we've overcome them. We've learned from our mistakes. We've built civilizations from nothing, torn ourselves apart, and rebuilt. We're not perfect, but we strive to be better, every single day. The alien leader remained motionless for a long moment, considering their words. Then, in a tone that seemed to echo with the weight of eternity, it spoke again. "We have observed many species, some more advanced than you, some less, but none have the ability to rise as you do, to look at their past, their mistakes, and strive for something greater. You may not have reached your full potential yet, Earth, but we see now that you are capable of it." The others behind the alien leader remained silent, watching the exchange. The entire world watched. Humanity was standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure if it would fall into the abyss or rise to take its place among the stars. The alien leader took a step back, lowering its hand. "We will give you a choice, Earth. You may choose to walk the path of destruction and repeat the mistakes of the past, or you may choose to walk the path of redemption, together, as a species, rising to become something beyond what we believed possible." The stillness that followed was deafening. The world held its breath, unsure of what would come next. Would humanity accept this chance? Would they show the galaxy that they were capable of greatness, not as slaves to the past, but as creators of their own future? Dr. Carter's mind swirled with possibilities. If the alien species was offering redemption, then it wasn't just for humanity's past. It was a chance to make things right, not just with the aliens, but with the universe itself. They had the power to rewrite their history, to rise above their ancient oppression. But it would take more than words. It would take action. "What will it be, Earth?" the alien leader asked, its voice tinged with anticipation. Commander Wells stepped forward, his face hard with determination. "We choose the path of redemption." There was no hesitation in his voice, no second-guessing. The world had waited for a leader, and now, in this moment, Commander Wells became the voice of humanity's future. Dr. Carter stepped up beside him, her resolve strengthening. "We will prove ourselves, not with violence, but with peace, not with conquest, but with cooperation. Humanity is no longer the mistake of the universe. We are what we choose to be." The alien leader remained silent for a moment. Then, slowly, it nodded. It seemed to consider their words, its expression unreadable behind the mask. But then, to everyone's shock, it spoke once more. "Very well. You have chosen your path. We will not stop you. But remember, Earth, your future is yours to shape. You have the power to prove your worth, not only to us, but to all who are watching." The leader raised its hand again, and the rest of the alien figures followed suit. "We will watch, but we will not interfere. The great mistake is yours to correct. Rise, humanity. Show us what you are capable of." With that, the aliens turned and began to walk back toward the ship, their movements graceful and deliberate. The ground trembled beneath them as the ship's door closed silently behind them. The massive craft slowly began to lift off the ground, rising higher and higher into the atmosphere, its shape fading into the distance. The world remained silent for a moment, processing the enormity of what had just happened. But then, a cheer began to rise from the crowds that had gathered below, across cities, through countries, and across the globe. Humanity had been given a second chance, a chance to prove their worth, a chance to rise beyond their past, and they would not squander it. Dr. Carter and Commander Wells exchanged a look, the weight of the moment settling on their shoulders. The aliens had given them the opportunity to prove themselves, but now the hard work began. The true test of humanity's spirit, its resolve, and its potential was just beginning. And this time, they would not fail. The world was forever changed. The moment the alien ship disappeared into the sky, a deafening silence fell across the globe. It was as though the Earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next step, the next move. Humanity had been given a choice, a chance to redeem itself from the ancient mistake of being seen as nothing more than pets by an alien race far beyond their understanding. The world was now united, not in fear, but in a sense of purpose, of hope, and of anticipation. But the question remained, could they live up to the challenge? Could humanity truly rise to the occasion? Dr. Isabel Carter stood on the balcony of the government building in Washington, D.C., her eyes fixed on the sky where the alien ship had vanished. The weight of the decision the world had just made pressed down on her. It wasn't enough to speak of change, of redemption. It wasn't enough to simply claim they could be better. They had to show it. "We have to move fast," she said to Commander Wells, who had joined her at the railing. The world's military, scientists, and leaders were already preparing to act, but the task ahead was nothing short of monumental. "The aliens will be watching. They won't let us fail." Wells nodded gravely. "We've been given a second chance, Isabel. We can't waste it." The first step was already underway. Nations had set aside their differences, at least temporarily. It wasn't just a matter of political unity. It was a moment of shared responsibility. The world had just received a message from the stars. Humanity wasn't just a collection of individual nations or divided people anymore. They were a species that had been given the rarest of opportunities to rewrite their future. And the path forward had to be one of cooperation, peace, and progress. But how could they start? Dr. Carter thought back to the alien leader's words. "You are no longer the mistake of the universe." Those words echoed in her mind, driving her forward. Humanity had made countless mistakes in the past: wars, oppression, environmental destruction. But they had also learned from those mistakes. They had grown. And now it was time to show that growth. The answer wasn't in isolation or military might. It was in the way humanity chose to rebuild itself, to turn its gaze inward and outward, to heal the rifts between nations, to embrace sustainability, to show compassion and innovation. It was about making choices that reflected the higher potential of their species. Over the next few weeks, the world saw an unprecedented wave of unity. Leaders from every corner of the globe gathered in a series of meetings, setting aside old rivalries in favor of a new shared vision. Climate change initiatives were fast-tracked. Global poverty and inequality became central to every discussion. Scientific collaborations, once fragmented by borders, were now being shared freely, with countries openly exchanging knowledge and resources in an effort to accelerate technological advancements for the betterment of all. At the same time, a cultural shift began to take place. People began to question their roles in the world, not just as individuals, but as a collective. Social media campaigns, grassroots movements, and community projects all started to reflect the ideals of peace, compassion, and cooperation. Old systems of inequality and exploitation, both within societies and between nations, were called into question. And though it was not easy, humanity began to take the first steps toward healing the divisions that had held them back for so long. And yet, for all the changes happening on Earth, Dr. Carter couldn't shake the feeling that they were still under observation. The aliens had made it clear that they were watching, but the message was no longer one of condemnation. It was one of hope. They had come to correct a mistake, but now they were waiting for humanity to prove itself. And in that waiting, there was a strange kind of pressure, a reminder that time, once again, was working against them. Every decision, every action, was scrutinized by eyes beyond their comprehension. It was a burden and an opportunity at once. Meanwhile, the alien species, once thought to be so distant and unknowable, had begun to make subtle gestures of support. While they remained largely silent, offering no direct interference, their presence was felt. Strange, small ships appeared in the skies from time to time, hovering for brief moments before disappearing again. It was clear they were monitoring humanity's progress, but it was also clear they were giving humanity space to rise on its own terms. But the question still lingered. Would it be enough? Weeks passed, and the transformation on Earth began to show its first fruits. Earth's largest energy companies announced the completion of a revolutionary new clean energy technology, one that could theoretically power the planet without carbon emissions. The breakthrough was the result of years of international collaboration, a joint effort between the scientific communities of the United States, China, India, and Europe. The world's first truly sustainable city was built in the heart of the Sahara Desert, a symbol of humanity's ability to adapt and innovate in the face of environmental catastrophe. Social changes, though slower, were taking root as well. Nations that once clung to old power structures were forced to reckon with their own histories of exploitation and inequality. People began to speak up, demanding justice not just for themselves, but for future generations. The UN initiated a global initiative to eliminate hunger by 2030, pledging to use the world's collective resources to ensure no child went to bed hungry. Still, the weight of the alien challenge lingered, reminding them all that what they were doing had to be more than just temporary gestures. It had to be real, sustainable. Humanity had to prove that they could transcend their own limitations, and the fear of failure, the fear of returning to their past mistakes, was always there, gnawing at the back of their minds. One evening, as Dr. Carter stood alone in her office, gazing out at the city lights of Washington, a strange sense of finality washed over her. She had spent so long trying to understand the ancient aliens, to decode their motives and their intentions. But now, in this moment, she realized something. The aliens hadn't been testing humanity to see if they could be perfect. They had been testing humanity's ability to choose, to learn from their past, and choose a better future. And that, Dr. Carter thought with growing clarity, was what had always separated humanity from the other species of the universe. They had the power to choose. To choose compassion over conquest, peace over war, understanding over fear. And now, they had to prove it, not to the aliens, but to themselves. The next day, as the world continued to move forward, Dr. Carter received a message from the United Nations. The aliens had sent a signal, an encrypted transmission, a simple message that could be decoded. She opened the message, holding her breath. The message was brief, yet it held all the gravity of their past, present, and future. We are watching. You have taken the first step. Continue. Prove that you are worthy. For a brief moment, Dr. Carter's heart stopped. Then, as she exhaled, she realized that this was more than just a warning. It was a message of belief, a message that the aliens had placed their trust in humanity's ability to rise above the mistakes of the past. Now, the true test had begun. The world had changed. It wasn't just the technological advances or the political shifts that made it different. It was the way humanity viewed itself, the belief that they had the potential to overcome anything, to rise above the mistakes of their past, and to forge a future greater than they had ever imagined. But the challenge that still loomed over them was as vast as the stars themselves. The aliens were watching, waiting to see if humanity could keep its promise. The time for empty words was over. The time for action was now. Dr. Isabel Carter stood at the center of the United Nations Assembly Hall, looking out over the faces of the world's leaders. Their eyes were heavy with the weight of the decisions they had to make, and the quiet murmur of conversation filled the room. For the first time in history, nations had put aside their differences for a common purpose, to prove humanity's worth to the universe. But even now, as the world worked together in ways that had once seemed impossible, there was an undercurrent of doubt. Were they truly ready? Could they keep their promises? She thought back to the signal that had arrived only a few days ago. The aliens hadn't just left Earth to its own devices. They were waiting, watching, judging. And with each passing day, the pressure mounted. If humanity failed, it would not just be a lost opportunity. It could mean the end of their place in the universe. The fear of returning to their past mistakes hung over them like a shadow. "We've been given an extraordinary chance," Dr. Carter said, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the hushed conversations. "But the real test is not whether we can make promises or whether we can appear to change. The test is whether we can sustain it, year after year, generation after generation. Whether we can build a future where our children no longer carry the scars of the mistakes we've made." Commander Wells, standing next to her, nodded. "The aliens want to see if we're truly different. They want to know if we can rise above our nature, beyond our instincts, and make choices that benefit not just ourselves, but all of creation." The world had already taken some major steps. Earth's military, once divided by borders and ideologies, had united in a massive effort to prevent war. Countries shared resources, not to fight, but to rebuild. Clean energy, medical technology, food production, and environmental restoration were now being shared across the globe. The greatest minds on the planet were working together, and humanity had already begun to solve problems that had once seemed insurmountable. The first universal law of the new Earth, do no harm, was being slowly embedded into the systems of power that had ruled the planet for centuries. The focus had shifted from domination to collaboration, and humanity had begun to prioritize the planet's health over their own greed. Climate change initiatives had reduced carbon emissions drastically, and the first city in the world to be completely carbon neutral had risen from the ground in the heart of Africa, a shining example of what was possible when humans truly united. But even as these achievements were celebrated, the aliens' presence loomed in the background. Their ships appeared from time to time, hovering in the skies, their enormous forms a constant reminder that humanity had yet to prove it could sustain this new direction. The aliens had not intervened directly. Perhaps they were giving humanity space to grow. But their message was clear. We are watching. Continue your journey. Dr. Carter knew that they couldn't stop now. The world was only beginning to realize the magnitude of their task. They had to be better than they had ever been before, not just for themselves, but for the sake of the universe. There was so much still to do. While the world's progress in some areas was extraordinary, there were still deep divides, pockets of resistance, and people who clung to old ways. Old leaders who refused to let go of their power. Old systems of oppression that refused to die. And then there were the scars of humanity's past. Wars, cruelty, exploitation that still existed in the hearts of many. These were the remnants of a time when humanity believed itself to be nothing more than a collection of individuals struggling to survive. Now they had to learn to be something more. They had to come together as a species, as a family of Earth, and prove that they could create a future of peace, not just for themselves, but for all life. But the aliens weren't going to wait forever. Dr. Carter's thoughts were interrupted as a small hologram flickered to life in front of her. It was a simple symbol, a star, surrounded by a ring of light. A message. The alien transmission came through, a familiar voice echoing in her mind. The leader of the alien race that had once treated humanity like pets, now addressing them as equals. It was a reminder of what was at stake. Humanity, the alien voice intoned, you have shown us glimpses of your potential, but we have seen many species rise and fall. It is not enough to merely rise. It is not enough to merely begin the journey. You must prove that you can walk the path without faltering. Your choices must be consistent, not only for today, but for the generations to come. The voice paused, as if considering its next words carefully. Your future is in your hands, Earth, but we are not the only ones watching. The entire universe is watching. This is your chance to redefine your destiny. The hologram faded, and Dr. Carter stood in stunned silence, her mind racing. They had made strides, yes, but the true test was not just how far they had come. It was how far they would go. Could they sustain this change? Could humanity prove that it had learned from its mistakes? I don't know if we're ready, Dr. Carter admitted quietly, but we have no choice but to try. Commander Wells placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll prove it. We have no choice. And so, humanity moved forward, driven by the desire to not just survive, but to thrive, to overcome the mistakes of the past and build something better. The great mistake had been their starting point, but now it was time to show the universe that they were more than that. They were capable of redemption, of progress, of greatness. And though the aliens were still watching, though the path ahead was uncertain, humanity would not falter. They would face the future with resolve, knowing that the universe was waiting to see if they could truly become something more. It was the ultimate test, and it was one they couldn't afford to fail. As the sun set over the earth, the sky was once again filled with stars. But this time, humanity knew they weren't just looking up at them. They were looking out toward the future, toward a future they would create, step by step, choice by choice, proving to the universe that they were no longer the mistake. They were something greater,